Do you, though?
Here's the thing. I can't finish the book because I know the story.
See,
I know this. Stephen King, you're just being long-winded. I know this story.
But do you, though?
Well, oh dear. Oh dear. He's just having a great time.
Hi guys, we are back. We are ZombieBananaSpiders. With me today is
Colin
and
Richards
and
Hilary.
And I am Heather, and we're taking a little bit of a departure. Let's see how high my voice can get. Departure with our topic today. We are exploring the world of The Shining, both the book, the Stanley Kubrick novel, the Stanley Kubrick 1980 film, and to some extent the 1990s miniseries. We get into a whole lot of stuff. It's a journey. There are revelations. I don't think my voice gets any higher than it just did. So, let's hit it. But this is something that both Hilary and I feel very passionately about, and I think that's something that I should, share with our listeners / viewers, is that we don't necessarily agree, but I think it very much comes from a place of love in terms of what I love about the story, the book that Stephen King wrote, and what Hilary loves about The Shining, the Kubrick version. Potentially the book, maybe it'll get there, I don't know, but I think it very much, it comes, we are extremely passionate because we feel very strongly about these topics and these ideas and how they come across in book and movie form. So yeah, this is going to be about the book versus the movie, so to speak. Like, that's the general topic of discussion, more or less, right?
King versus Kubrick that was the subject of the video that I'm going to do, is King versus Kubrick, because...
Okay.
And to be completely candid, I don't even really care about the story. Like, the story's whatever. Sorry. I think what's the most interesting about The Shining, and I think one of the reasons why it survived as long as it has, is because of this weird King versus Kubrick element to it.
But one thing that I wanted to say before I forget, when did the Kubrick movie come out?
1980.
Okay, so it was only 3 years after after the book was published, because one thing that I was reading was that The Shining as the book has become sort of a classic, not gothic-esque, but I mean it's kind of, but it's become a classic horror novel. And there were so many horror novels that came after it, and horror stories that came after it, that were like the fill in the blank, in part because of how popular that book was. Now, knowing that that the Kubrick movie came so close after it being published, then okay, maybe that added certainly added to the popularity of it. I think the thing I was reading said that after the Carrie movie came out, the book just exploded. Like, I mean, it was popular before, but like they sold millions of copies of the book after the movie came out. So knowing that they were so close, okay, I could see how it would be more of a King versus Kubrick thing, contributing to the popularity. Because I thought, well, if the movie came out like 10 years later or something like that, the book had 10 years to build a following before the movie. I don't know how much of it, but yeah, if it was so close in time, then definitely.
Well, and I am 90% sure that I read that they'd sold the rights to the movie before he'd even finished the book.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
And that was his third book, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember.
Wow.
I think it was Carrie, Salem's Lot, and then The Shining. Don't
The
quote
Shining.
don't
The
quote me
Shining,
on that.
yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
I'm
But-
I'm like right there with you. I'm like 99% sure that's the case. So wow.
Yeah. My general thing is I love Stephen King's books. I have never really explored him as a person. I remember reading or hearing someplace a while ago, like somebody said it was like, you don't ever really want to know your heroes because they'll always let you down. And so I've kind of taken that mentality into everything that I love. Like sometimes I really, really like researching something and I want to know everything about it. But when it comes to people, like I enjoy knowing how people tick, like what makes them tick. But I've never for like Stephen King especially, like I've never really wanted to like I don't read interviews with him. I do a couple times, and every time I do he disappoints me. So it's like I don't I did that is a part of him. I want to read his books, and I think that's part of why, like, where my passion comes from. It's from the book itself. It's not even King necessarily. It's that he was telling a story in The Shining. Kubrick seemed to want to tell a different story. And that's fine. But why do you call it The Shining? Why not make it your own story? Now, I realize that with the movie that we got, the Kubrick movie, like, it was similar enough to King's book that, like, if he didn't say, yes, this was inspired by or based on or, you know, a retelling of King's story, like, he would have gotten sued that way and the other way. But this is my hang-up, is that I am so invested in the characters of this book. And Kubrick didn't seem to care about the characters at all. He had his own vision for what he wanted. And I just, like, why did it have to be this story? Why could he not tell his own story if he wanted to go in such a
Banksy
different...
said, bad artists copy, good artists steal. So I think Kubrick saw something in Stephen King's, and there is quotes. It is very interesting to me, and maybe I have read and I've listened to commentary for both versions, the miniseries The Shining and the 1980s version of The Shining, and I've watched making of both. I've watched documentaries. I've read a bunch of stuff with interviews on Stanley Kubrick and his work on The Shining. And I don't know, I imagine part of it is because he's no longer living, that people hold him in such reverence. And they have the things that I found in terms of him commenting on The Shining and Stephen King have been positive. He's been complimentary of Stephen King and Stephen King's story. But I think, in my opinion, and from what I've read and how Stephen King talks about it and how, like, the team Kubrick talks about it, they were working on a project. They were able to, it sounds like they were able to remove themselves, you know, the way that they say you're supposed to with art, and not very many people can. And even that miniseries was what, 96 or something like that?
Something.
In the commentary for the miniseries that came out 15, 16 years later, however long later it came out, Stephen King focused on how bad of a representation the original Shining was and how much better his miniseries was than Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And just like he was focused on that instead of like talking about what made the story great and like positive things about his version. It was putting down the 1980s version to bring up the miniseries, which, sorry, I mean,
it's not good.
There are good things about it.
Yeah.
There are things that I like about it, and there are things that I don't like about the Kubrick version. I don't think that either is a perfect representation of what I know of the book. And all I know is that the miniseries was in collaboration with the original creator. So I have to imagine that the miniseries is more of what he was going for in terms of the look of things. But I don't think that, like, his idea is not original. Like, his The Shining is based off of it was inspired by Burnt Offerings, not based off of, but inspired by Burnt Offerings, which was probably inspired by something else. Like, the idea of a parasitic building, haunted building in that way is not an original idea. Also, like, I'm not trying to downplay Stephen King's vision or anything like that, but I think that why he is so angry still to this day about a movie that was made 40 years ago is that he is Jack Torrance, unfortunately, to the point where, like, based on how he speaks about how he speaks about Jack Torrance's alcoholism, how he speaks about the little things that he included in the story that he experienced and his Stephen King's wife experienced through his alcoholism and addiction. It makes me concerned of what was going on in that household a little bit. Like, and I don't want to say anything about anything. Like, I love Stephen King and I don't want to think anything about anything, but based on the things that he said were true, that he included with Jack Torrance, it makes me wonder. And I don't know if he is even aware of how much he is Jack Torrance was.
He is. And actually that was something I was reading earlier. And I think that's probably why he can't, I mean, it's absolutely why he can't let go of it, but it's also something he commented that he didn't realize that he was Jack Torrance until after he got sober. And so, like, when did that actually happen? So, like, you know, saying, like, yeah, he's still hanging on to it 15, 16 years later, he might have only come to that realization around the same time that the miniseries was, like, I don't even know when he got sober. So, like, for him, I'm not really excusing him at all, but I think for him it's like one of those things where, like, every other people can see it, but until you come to that realization yourself, it doesn't have as much meaning. And then when you actually realize it in such a public way that, yeah, this terrible person is me. And he talked about in this thing that I was reading, he's like, yeah, I had, when he was drinking and doing whatever other drugs that he did, he was saying, you know, I would have these periods of extreme violent rage. They'd be directed at my wife, they'd be directed at my kids, and he said, like, I would hate them and I would hate myself for hating them. And it's like, yeah, that's that is Jack Torrance. And I think this gets back to the idea I was saying earlier about how Stephen King is concerned about characters. Kubrick, at least in this movie, is not. Because the book, it's not about a haunted hotel. It's not. That is not the point. And this, I can't remember this thing I was reading. I think it was a Stephen King quote where King said, Jack Torrance is a haunted hotel. Like, he was the one who was haunted. And the thing I was reading was speculating. They're like, even if they had just gone to a regular hotel, if he had been caretaking, a Days Inn somewhere, would they, over the winter, being locked there with his family over the winter, they're like, would they all have survived? Probably not. Like, that was what this chapter that I was reading was speculating that Jack was so miserable and so haunted and so desperate that it wouldn't have taken a haunted hotel to drive him over the edge. It could have been something completely natural, something completely normal. And I think I am not excusing Stephen King's petty behavior, but I think that might be part of why he can't let this go, is that it's so much who he was and such a shameful part of who he was that it's probably still tied up into his conception of his own identity.
Well, I find that I find that very sad. And like, I didn't know if he'd recognized it or not. And at least he had, if what you say, he has recognized it, and that's great. But like, he put it out there. Like, he's the one that wrote it. He wrote himself. And also, I don't know about, maybe he would have killed his family anyway, but their King confirmed there are ghosts in the hotel. So I don't know if like all this lore around The Shining, where are there ghosts, aren't there ghosts? King says there are. Oh, so
yeah.
But like, to be, what I was saying earlier is like, the story to me is not unique. Sorry, I don't know if it's because I just grew up with it, and so I'm not even all that interested in the story. What interests me is like the story between the creators. And Stephen King was obviously working through some things when he wrote that book, and that's fine. That is fine. I think Stanley Kubrick was working through some other things when he did that movie. So I think it's just really interesting to watch them back to back. The 1980s version and the miniseries are so similar. And yet they're like, the character development and like such small elements are different that it's a completely different story almost. And I agree with that. And I agree that Stephen King's story would have to be different because Stephen King was writing himself, and Stanley Kubrick wasn't going through the same things that Stephen King was going through. Right. And there is a quote that I have of him where he was talking about Stephen King, where he was talking about how they don't tell you how angry you can get at the people that you love. Like, they tell you that it'll be fulfilling to be a parent, and it'll be the most wonderful thing, and father knows best and stuff like that. But they don't tell you that father sometimes wants to beat the crap out of you because he's so angry and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, because to me they're two separate things. Stephen King was trying to do one thing with his story,
Mm-hmm.
and Stanley Kubrick was trying to do something else with his story.
Mm-hmm.
And if Stephen King is aware of why he's ashamed of the story, then I hope someday he can work through that, because I really do feel like, and I do need to finish the book, but I don't know if his story would be as big of a thing if Stanley Kubrick hadn't had such success with the 1980s version of it. I think it would be one of Stephen King's great novels, but it wouldn't be, like one that everybody knows of Stephen King necessarily.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is hard to say. And you're right. I have no idea if it would have been, because I like the story. I think it's an incredibly compelling story. And one thing I wanted to touch back on really quickly. Yes, the hotel is absolutely haunted. Like, spoilers, but yeah, there are absolutely ghosts in there. But the story, like the King book, the hotel is, it's not that interesting to me. Like, and I don't know if it's because I've read this book like 10 million times at this point, but to me it was never, it's the characters who are interesting. It's their interaction before, during, and after they are in the hotel. And certainly the hotel has a role to play. But the story, if you were to say, and probably, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but my guess is that if you were to ask somebody, what is The Shining about? Probably one of the first things they would say is, oh, it's a haunted hotel. It's not, though. I mean, the hotel is haunted. It absolutely is. But that's not what the story is about. The story is about these people. And how the hotel affects their relationships, but only really exacerbates what was there already. So if you leave out the people and those complex relationships, to me, the story is very bland. And that's kind of how I feel about the Kubrick movie, is that it's not scary to me. It's not scary to me. It has, of course, those iconic images. Like, I love that image of the blood gushing out of the elevator. Like, that's fantastic. And the image of the two little girls and everything. It has such wonderful imagery, but the story itself is boring. I find it boring because he completely left out those interesting interpersonal characters.
I could see where you're coming from both of you, actually. And, I can get to an extent about why Stephen King was so upset when he first saw the movie in 1980, is because, even if he didn't know it at the time, this work was, based on what you're saying, deeply personal to him. Like, he put himself into a book and was working through whatever issues. Then suddenly, while he's writing it, some film companies like buying the rights to it. And you think, oh, great, this deeply personal work is going to get out there for people to see it. And because movies are more of a cultural touchstone than books, unfortunately, our society looks to movies as the highest part of culture. Like that is the ultimate being, the ultimate expression of a story or whatever. and he goes and sees it, and Kubrick has done something completely different, using the barest, emphasizing the parts of his book that, like you were saying, Heather, are not the forefront of the book. And he makes his own unique thing, but I could understand why King would be so upset seeing that. You know, and whether how he went about expressing that anger, maybe, I don't know, maybe not the best thing. But you know, I guess as an artist, I can get that. Like if I made a comic book and it was very much about me, and then they adapted it to the screen and completely emphasize all the wrong things, so to speak. I think it might be tough to look beyond that and take the movie for what it is and enjoy it. And so I can definitely get that. And what you were saying about the hotel parts being boring, Heather, you sound just like the reviews of the film that came out at the time. I think you're absolutely right, Hilary. I don't think The Shining would be one of King's most celebrated stories, or you ask some random Joe Schmo on the street, name a Stephen King book, The Shining. I don't think it would be that without the movie, but I think it took the movie a long time to get to that part for people to embrace it, you know?
Well, it depends, maybe critics, but like the movie, he did The Shining to open doors so that he could do more like strange things. The Shining was like his attempt at doing a mainstream movie. So I don't know. I don't know. For me, I don't understand, and I get for Stephen King that it's so deeply personal that maybe he just can't get over it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not really, and I know that I keep saying like Team King, Team Kubrick, but for me, they're two different things. They're two different pieces of art that are not the same. So you can like compare the similarities, but they're ultimately the goal of the two pieces are two different. They're trying to end up in two different places, and they're trying to get you to feel two different things. Yeah. And so I don't understand why they can't coexist peacefully, because they're two different things.
I think. Oh, go ahead, Colin.
You go ahead, Heather.
I might be only speaking for the rabid Stephen King fans, and maybe not even them. So I'll just speak for myself. I think you're right, Hill. I think it's hard. It's hard for me to see them as two separate things. Because I keep reverting back to, if Kubrick wanted something different, if he wanted to tell a different story, if he wanted to go in a different direction, why not tell his own story? And that probably wasn't an option. Like, I mean, if they were trying to buy the rights to this, and like he was trying to do like break more into mainstream, like there are so many other things that are tied into that. But that I keep defaulting back to that.
But because, well, I can't find the quote at the moment, but there is a quote from, I believe, Jack Nicholson about Stanley Kubrick. He had a conversation with him, and Kubrick said something along the lines of, he would never be so arrogant as to think that he could come up with the best of some thing that he was looking to use. So instead of like building a hotel, he found one, you know, like, so I think that he was searching, and I don't know if you and I, if you've heard this story or not, but Stephen King told this story on the commentary to the miniseries, and I've heard it from a couple different different people too. Kubrick used to just, when he was looking for a vehicle to tell the story that he wanted to tell, or to explore the things that he wanted to explore at at the time, he would just read a bunch of books. He would like randomly choose them because he was afraid of missing out. If he like went on any kind of pattern or went in any kind of order, he felt like he would maybe miss out on something. So he would just randomly choose these books. And he, the anecdote was that his secretary, Kubrick's secretary, was sitting out at her desk, and she'd just hear every couple hours, she'd hear like a thump, and it'd be Kubrick throwing a book against the wall because it wasn't the one that he wanted. And then there were several hours where she heard nothing, and he'd found the book, and the book was The Shining. Mm-hmm. So his philosophy was, I think, was more along the lines of using what other artists had created to make something, I guess, kind of like a collage almost, like collage together these things and make it something completely different.
Mm. Interesting. I could definitely see too that when the rights to The Shining were purchased by whatever production company, I mean, I don't think Stanley Kubrick necessarily had a say in that. I think that producers approached him and said, hey, like, Stan, my man, we want you to direct this flick we got. We bought the rights to this book, The Shining. And then Stanley Kubrick was just going to do, like, if they bought the rights to Green Eggs and Ham, we would have a very different Green Eggs and Ham film. Wow. Like, I don't think Kubrick was going to, yeah, exactly. He wasn't going to just straight adapt something. Sure. He wasn't like, get me Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay, and we're doing it one for one. Like, that was not going to happen. So yeah, whatever it was, he was going to do his own thing with, and it just happened to be The Shining that he was in charge.
I mean, he was looking for a horror story to tell. Mm. It's interesting, and Jacob pointed it out to me. I hadn't noticed it, but he did one film for every genre. Like, he was going through and doing different. He did a comedy, he did a sci-fi, he did a horror. I feel like he did a Western, maybe.
He did a war
movie. Like, it was really about experimentation, it seemed like, with him. And he was what was interesting, one of the things that was interesting for me is that he pays attention to so many things and has purpose behind a lot of things. And some things don't have purpose and some things do, but because he had purpose with a lot of things in that movie, there is so much speculation and so much mythology around the story now, just the Kubrick version of meaning behind it. So I think that is also like part of what keeps the conversation going, is that nobody really, and they say nobody really knows what he was going for in this, but there are lots of interviews. If people look, there are lots of interviews of Kubrick talking about The Shining, so you do kind of know what he was going for.
Now, so all this being said, Heather, do you like the Kubrick movie? Like, if you were to take the adaptation point out of it, would you say like, yeah, I like it enough on its own merits as a film? Because I know you're on team book. In terms of like,
I think I like it. I like that better. I'm not on team King. I'm not on team Kubrick. I'm on team book. I like that.
Team book, got it. Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing for me, because like as I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm trying to get it, and I'm trying to see how that works and how that is justified, you know, taking somebody else's story and using it to tell the story that you want, where it's not inspiration. You know, if it was inspiration, it wouldn't be Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. It would be Stanley Kubrick's movie, right? It's he's using King's story to do his own thing with it. And I think that's where I have the biggest hang up. But I am trying to see the movie just on its own merit. And I don't know. I don't know if I like it or not. I find parts of it boring. Like I said, I find parts of it visually mesmerizing. I really like, as stupid as I think it is, I remember seeing the movie as a kid. I don't remember how old I was, but seeing the movie as a kid, and when Danny figuring out, again, spoilers, Danny walking backwards in the maze, like in the snow, to throw his dad off. Like, I remember as a little kid, that scene was like, oh my god, he's so smart, he's gonna get away, everything's gonna be okay. And so, like, there are scenes in there that really affected me. I hate that they killed Halloran. There's no excuse for that. Just none. Absolutely none. Like, I don't even think this is a hill I will die on it. I don't even think it makes sense in the context of the story that Kubrick was trying to tell.
Oh. I think that, I mean, you could argue a lot of things about that, but I the way that the commentary explained it was that they were trying, it was a false sense of hope.
Maybe, but if it was, I don't think it was executed well. Because in the book, okay, spoilers, Hill. In the book, Halloran shows up, and he gets the living crap beaten out of him. Like, he, like, fights so hard, and he has these moments on... I don't want to spoil it, because I really want you to finish the book. But he has these wonderful moments on his journey trying to get back to the hotel. And he gets there, and he gets the crap beaten out of him. And then there's another thing that happens that totally separate. You don't get it in the movie because he's killed within 5 seconds of showing up. My hill, I'm gonna die on it. But it's this wonderful other moment that I think if that's what they were going for with this building up of hope, maybe Halloran can do something, maybe they'll be okay, maybe everything will turn out okay. For me, the book sets it up better, where he is that one line of hope, that one connection they have to the outside, and then he gets there and he gets beaten within an inch of his life, and you're like, is he gonna die? Oh my god, he traveled this whole way, he had all this stuff happen to him, is he gonna die? And then he doesn't die. And then all these other things happen, and then this one thing happens that I'm not going to give away, but this one thing happens, you're like, oh my god, this is like, they built us up and built us up and built us up, and like, oh, thank god, okay, he's beaten, but he's all right, it's okay, and then he builds it up again, and then it's another, like, oh my god moment. And so if that's what Kubrick was going for, if that's what they were doing in the movie, I don't think it was executed well.
Here's the thing. That movie's already over 2 hours long. So,
I don't care.
I mean, it would be 3 hours long. And he was already known for really long movies. Like, as a miniseries, the King talks about it, how he's able to take, and I feel like we may have talked about this already, but maybe not, how he's able to take his time because it's over the course of 6 nights or whatever, 3 nights or whatever. You can build things up like that. But in a movie, you can't. It's a different thing, and you have, like, that's one of the reasons why you have to adapt in certain ways, because you don't have the time to build things up. And even, like, I feel like it might have been something that Stephen King was talking about, how even turning a page builds up suspense in a way that watching something can't. And it was really interesting hearing him talk about this. This is a different subject, but I'm going to say it before I forget it. The complications with a miniseries, because they had to deal with building up suspense and then a commercial break. Yeah. And then coming back, like, so that's something they had to consider, but at least it wasn't, they were able to work with it in terms of, they knew when the commercial breaks were going to happen and stuff. Whereas, like, if it was a movie that was on TV, it wouldn't, the commercial breaks would just be whenever. Not that that's an issue anymore too much, but it was just interesting to hear him talk about it, because it's not something I would have thought about.
Yeah. Now, that being said, yes, it's a long movie, but there are still little things he could have done to build the tension better. For example, there's a shot in the movie of Halloran on the plane, flying back to Denver. And he takes the time to show Halloran on the plane, stopping the stewardess, saying, I can't remember what he says, if he asks if they're going to be on time or something. He asks her something, she responds, they show that. In the book, spoilers, he's on the plane, it's in the middle of a horrible snowstorm. There's, like, lightning in the snowstorm. That, yes, in the book, like, he can take more time to build the tension, but all Kubrick had to do, if he was really wanting to build tension, is put the plane in a snowstorm.
Okay, so this was 1980.
Just shake the floor!
And I don't know exactly, like, he had a huge budget. They, he filmed in England. They built the biggest soundstage in England to accommodate The Shining, which was pretty cool, because they then were able to bring more film industry to England, because they now had this huge soundstage. But the snow in the movie was salt. They put exhaust in there to make it look cold, but it was actually really hot. Like, the things that they did for camera tricks and, like, special effects and stuff were really cool, but, like, not easy. And I don't know what it would have taken, or where the budget would have allowed them to have a snowstorm around that. I don't know how difficult it would have been for them. Maybe it would have been easy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I don't know either. But I mean, they had it, like, they could have had somebody with a bag of salt outside the window just shaking it. They could have had everybody on the plane, like, everybody shake.
Do we know that they didn't?
I'm pretty sure that they did. Like, I mean, I seriously do not know as much about this movie as you do, but I do remember that scene. There was no indication that the plane was under any duress. There was no tension in that scene. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now to absolutely confirm. But that was the one thing that I was thinking about, was that you're following Halloran on this trip, how different it is from the book and in the movie. And of course, there, as you're saying, there are two different things. But if he was trying to build tension to try and make Halloran their last hope, and then take that hope away by killing him as he walks in the door, I know it's not exactly as he walks in the door. He gets in the door and then he kills him. But it didn't work. For me, it didn't work.
I don't actually feel that Halloran showing up, I don't think that was to build any sort of tension at all. I think that my opinion is what Kubrick was trying to do was set it up like every other movie that came out prior to 1980, where like some big damn hero shows up and saves the day. And so Halloran's journey to Sidewinder and to the Overlook was almost in the movie almost like perfunctory. Like he just gets on a plane, he goes there, and there was a snowstorm, and he's like, oh crap, but I'm driving up there anyway. And I think he was playing with audience expectation, where they just expected Halloran to just show up and save the day, and then that just boom, dead and gone is like, that's a shocker, not because of what it actually is in the story, but because of the audience expectation, because of all the other films the audience has ever seen. And whether it worked or not is a little, I'm iffy on that. I guess part of it is I grew up with the movie as like you guys did. So to me, it's just like I always knew that was going to happen. So it just, when it does, it's like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I don't think he was trying to build tension. I think he was just, it was like a setup,
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, it does.
This is water.
It also doesn't. Hi, Jacob.
Heather says hi.
What's up?
It also doesn't help, that I don't know if the token black character getting killed off was a thing back then. I don't know if it's only a token thing now because of how much it kept happening. But watching, I think that's another potential unfair thing about seeing the Kubrick movie through 21st century eyes, there we go, is that it's like, oh my god, he just killed off the black character. Oh well, of course he did. It's like, in that respect, it's like he's almost following a trope. But I'd never thought of it that way, what you were saying, Colin. And if he was actually trying to play with that trope, with the audience expectation, and play with that trope, it plays into killing off the only black character that we've seen in so many horror movies. But I guess there is another way of seeing it.
Yeah, I think with Kubrick, he doesn't go into, my impression of him, he doesn't go into a film without thinking about what it's going to do to the audience. He doesn't go into it being like, I'm just here to tell a story. He's there to make a piece of art that's going to be different and unique in certain ways. Like you said, Hilary, experiment a lot. Do things like, was it Barry Lyndon? He shot only with natural lighting, which is very difficult to do, and stuff like that. And so I don't think he makes decisions purely based on the story. I think there's a lot more to what he makes a movie for, why he does it, than just the art of storytelling. I think it has a lot to do with the craft of filmmaking. And that you're right, though. That always stuck out with me, the Dick Halloran showing up and just getting immediately like, boom, spoiler alert, axe in the back, and he's just done. But yeah, so I wonder.
The thing that I have learned about Kubrick is that most, like, there are no accidents in his filmmaking. He is very purposeful. So there was reasoning behind the death of Halloran beyond I don't know, like the interviews that I've seen in terms of him commenting on things and people talking to him about things, and even the actor that played Halloran in Kubrick's version,
brothers.
it doesn't ring racist to me. It rings, there was a reason he wanted to kind of it seemed like to me Kubrick was interested in watching a guy who was already unhinged. What would happen if he just completely went as insane as a person could go? Like by the end of that movie, he couldn't even form words. He couldn't even save himself from freezing to death. And I think that for me, that's what that movie is, and how he gets there using Stephen King's story. Maybe it would have been better with a different story, but he didn't use a different story. He used The Shining. So I think it seems like in King's version, and maybe I feel like Wendy wasn't done well in either version.
No.
But in King's version, and I'm not sure about the book. Hopefully, Wendy is better in the book than in even in the mini series. But my impression is that The Shining, Stephen King's The Shining, is about a special little boy who has a magical power and his father and their relationship. And then Kubrick's version seems to be a man who is slowly going or quickly going insane, and his family, like, and how his family is dealing with that.
Yeah.
And also, like, there are quotes from people who are talking about the movie who say that his family's slowly going insane with him at the hotel. So it's like, I don't know. But Kubrick's version, it seems like Jack Torrance is the main character, and it's kind of how his family is dealing with him. And then for me, the miniseries is more, or what I have gleaned from the book and the miniseries is like this relationship between the father and son.
I think one of the biggest, I think you're absolutely right in that, Hilary, and I think one of the biggest alterations, and we won't go into too many spoilers here, but is Jack's ultimate fate at the end of the book versus his ultimate fate at the end of the film. And without spoiling, you're absolutely right. Like, the way Jack ends up in the book is about that relationship of him and his family and his child, and going through like all the crap he's done and everything else. And in the movie, it's definitely about he just succumbs to like madness, the destruction of this family or whatever. Heather, it looks like you're pondering something. Would you care to ponder aloud?
Yes, because it's interesting what you were saying, Hill, about the difference between the Kubrick version and the mini series, the King version. I feel like the book is both of those things. It is the relationship between the father and the son and the whole family. It is about a special little boy who has magical powers and his father. It is about watching a man go as insane as he possibly can. And I feel like the book takes it even further, because he's an alcoholic, he is depressed, he is desperate, but he's not like if we've got a spectrum here of the insanity of Jack Torrance, this end will be the hotel where he ends up, after the hotel. This is where the Jack Torrance of the book starts. This is where the Jack Torrance of the Kubrick movie starts. like, there is a smaller window for him moving to that level of insanity from the book.
Once again, he only had a certain amount of time to get him there.
Absolutely. But, and we could keep talking about this forever. But I do agree with you. You're only working with, I mean, and with Kubrick, you're even working with an expanded amount of time than what you would with another director, and you still only have a number of time, a certain amount of time. But it was just interesting to hear you, like, sort of explain what the focus of the Kubrick movie was in terms of the characters, and then what the King miniseries was in terms of the characters, and for me to think about how the book actually does both of those things. So it's kind of a mini revelation for me.
I don't think that the miniseries does it particularly well.
No, but
I understand, based on you and Mom, plotting out the book for me when I was a little kid. That's what the story's supposed to be about. And that was my biggest problem with the movie for the longest time, was that the book was supposed to be about this relationship between a father and a son, and how powerful it was. And that's not what the movie was about. But then once I realized that's not what it's supposed to be about. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is not supposed to be about a father and a son's relationship and how powerful that is. Mm-hmm. And that made me able to appreciate it for what it actually was, and not what it was supposed to be if it was based off of Stephen King's story. Mm-hmm. And actually hearing you say that it is part of the book, that's the part that he latched onto then, the insanity part, and that's what he wanted to explore.
Yeah, and I think, like I was saying, like that's the revelation for me. Like, that, I think that will finally allow me to get over my feelings for Kubrick, is because, like, hearing you say that, it's there. It's in the book. He just took that one part. Now, I don't particularly agree with how he treated the characters. That will be a whole nother, like, 10-part podcast series. But, like, that's what it was. That's what he wanted to explore. And it finally clicked.
Oh, good.
Oh my God. I've watched somebody learn something about themselves live on the air. Holy cow.
That's not what we wanted with this. I wanted to convince you all that I'm right. Well, after that spirited conversation, how about we do some recommendations? Colin, what do you have?
This week I picked another ghost story. This is Ju-on the Curse, which is part of you might know the American remake, The Grudge. But after the two short films, this is the first real Grudge movie. It's another ghost story. It's about a haunted house in Japan, and if you go there, you're dead. Like, it just kills you. There's no hope for survival. I don't know why that's appealing, but it's terrifying as all get out. I think I've mentioned it on other shows before, but this is the Japanese version. You could also see The Grudge, the first of the American remakes. It was directed by the same guy, basically the same story. So either one, terrifying. That's all I got. It's just, it gives me the heebs and the jeebs, and I don't know, go watch it. It's great. And that's
cool.
it.
Very cool.
That's all I have to say about that.
After that,
did you
go ahead.
Was it scary? Were you scared of that version of it?
I don't know. Yeah, kind of. Also not. It's kind of low budget, so and I knew what I saw the Japanese version second, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. Sure. But just it's one of those movies that while I'm watching it, I'm less terrified than when I'm lying in bed awake at night thinking about it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then, with a lot of horror movies, you go through that, how would I get out of this? Like, what would I do? And the doom and gloom of, like, there's nothing you can do. Like, maybe kill yourself before the ghost can. That's
Right.
about it. Like, so yeah,
Thanks.
good stuff.
Great.
What do you got, Hill?
Well, I just revisited this little gem.
Oh.
This movie, I can't remember. It was like, what, 2013 or something like that came out. And R.I.P.D. It's like if Men in Black and the Ghostbusters had a baby. That's what R.I.P.D. would be. And it wasn't very well received when it came out, but it's so much fun. It's only 96 minutes, which I'm wondering if there's a director's cut, because honestly, Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges playing like a Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones dynamic, except that Ryan Reynolds is playing the straight man and Jeff Bridges gets to be the goofball.
Wow.
And it's just so much fun. But they should have, I feel like if they would have given Ryan Reynolds a little bit more room to, he doesn't talk a lot in the movie. So if they would have let him do his thing, he was great in the moments that he interacted, but it was just like it was so much action and not as much dialogue for him. So it was a wonderful movie, but it would have been better if he would have had more lines, I guess. Super fun, but only you got to buy it on Prime. So, but worth the purchase. I would say 8 out of 10 ghosts.
Ooh.
That's a lot of ghosts. I'd watch that. Well, yeah, thank you, because I had seen the trailers and that movie didn't look very good, so I never sought it out. But I'm going to go check it out then. 8 out of 10 ghosts can't be wrong, Hilary. Nice. All right,
Heather Ann.
Okay, so my recommendation is as old as time. It is a twisted tale. It's the What If Belle's Mother Cursed the Beast. It's part of a series that it's Disney Press, so endorsed by Disney. But it was a bunch of novels. Where's the thing?
Sorry.
2016. So published in 2016. I think that's when a lot 2014, 15, 16 and forward was when a lot of these books were coming out, where it was like a different kind of darker take on the classic Disney stories. So I just happened to pick this one up a while ago. I've not read any of the other ones, but I really liked this book. Like surprisingly liked this book. And it sets up a lot of things. It actually addresses, I think, in a very smooth way, plot holes that people had with the Beauty and the Beast movie. But there are parts of it that are really, really dark. And like parts that really stay with me. And so this one is really good. I can't really say anything about the other the books in the series, but I highly recommend this one. It's very good.
Is it all by the same author, do you know?
I don't know for sure. I believe that Liz Braswell is the author of this one, and I think she has written more than one. I don't think they're all by the same author, but I think she has written more than one.
Nice.
So,
that sounds fun. Yeah, be into that dark Disney. That sounds pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, join us next time, and certainly if you have any other recommendations, things you'd like to hear us talk about, things that you think we should read or watch or in other ways consume media-wise. But where can people find you?
You can find me at colinrichardsart.com. That's also on Instagram. and Facebook. And if you check out Markers and Monsters on YouTube, that's where you can find my art and video series. So seek me out, young traveler. I don't know. that's me. That's where you can find me.
And I'm on Heralius_art on Instagram.
Awesome. And you can always email us. You can find us on Instagram, ZombieBananaSpiders, and you can also email us at ZombieBananaSpiders@gmail.com if you have suggestions, recommendations, all that good stuff. But until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh dear. Oh dear. He's just having a great time. Did you watch the debate last night?
I already
Jacob almost threw up laughing.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I definitely think that politics is important, but I genuinely think I would rather shove a light bulb up my ass and have somebody hit it with a sledgehammer, my ass, to shatter the bulb in my rectum, than deal with a political debate. Like, that's...
There was a... Have you guys heard anything about it?
The fly?
Yeah, it landed on his hair and it stayed there. It didn't even move for like way longer than flies normally. Like, oh my goodness.